Hey guys, Michael here for Lake Michigan Angler TV, and in today's video I'm going to walk you through the process on how to catch, cut, and brine your own alewives into meat strips to run on your meat rigs. And there's no secret that meat rigs catch big kings, and it's widely used across the Great Lakes for that purpose, from tournament anglers to anglers that are trophy hunting for big kings. It's a great way to target them. And so we're here down at Kenosha Harbor. I'm going to talk a little bit about the process here to catch these alewives and to go through that. We're going to keep it very, very simple here because you can go really deep into the rabbit hole of brines and formulas and mixing this with mixing that to kind of come up with something. We're going to walk you through the most basic, process to do that. Keep it very simple. And as you kind of get into it, then you can dive into it much further if you choose to. So what you need to know is that in the early spring period, these alewives come into the harbors up and down the shoreline. So don't get wrapped up with where I'm at. Anywhere in these harbors, for the most part, you're gonna find the alewives in it at the pier heads and so on and so forth. As far as what you're gonna need, get yourself a little ultralight rod, something used for your panfish. And you're gonna wanna use a sabiki rig. I got one right here. The thing with sabiki rigs right here is it's gonna have a whole bunch of hooks on it. Obviously, depending on what state you're in, check the regs there for how many hooks you can have on here. I generally cut them down to two and keep it simple, just because they're also really prone to catch on to stuff, and they're a nuisance to kind of unhook. And that's all you really need. And you just get a little weight at the bottom. You're essentially kind of approaching it like drop shotting, and you just got the sabiki rig out here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna just drop down in front of us here. I know there's gonna be alewives in this area right here, and we're gonna simply just approach it with like a hopping or a jigging. All right, let's go ahead here with our first drop. Just gonna pitch it out a little bit. Tend to find that they'll gravitate to rocks or along the seawalls here, so you don't have to really launch it out into the open water at all, honestly. Once it hits the bottom, just close the bail up, tighten up on it, and just gonna kind of hop it up and down a little bit. And typically, if these alewives are around, it doesn't take very long for you to get into something here. And there it is, our first drop. Got ourselves one little alewife, just like that. So you're gonna just wash, rinse, repeat. Now the great thing about this alewife fishing too for your meat rigs is that it's a great time to bring your kid. These alewives are all over the place and they will eat these sabikis all day. So it's a lot of fun because you'll double up on them, and your kids will have fun doing it too. All right, so you're gonna wash, rinse, repeat this whole process. Catch as many alewives as you think you're gonna need for the amount of strips you're gonna want for the season or for whatever time period it's gonna be. I have about 2 dozen now in the bucket here, which reminds me to mention that you're gonna wanna preserve these fish as best as possible. They do die pretty quickly. Keep some ice in the bucket with water. You can put an aerator in there if you want or whatever. But once you catch them all, you're gonna wanna complete the rest of this process the same day, just from start to finish, just knock it all out. It's not super intensive, so let's go ahead and pack it all up, go back home and go through the cut process. So let's talk about what we're gonna need here for the rest of this setup. First, obviously, is the knife. I think 7 inches or under is gonna be better for you to be able to kind of cut through these small alewife. Make sure it's sharp, obviously. We also are gonna need some little plastic containers here to put the strips in to then do the brining. So I have a couple here as well. And then for today, we're gonna be using the Potski Fire Brine. And I'm really gonna focus most on the natural, which is the clear here, but we also have options to do some coloring of the meat strips. So we have blue, we also have a green, and this is the beauty about doing these meat strips yourself, is that you can kind of DIY and experiment with formulas and concoctions that turn out to be great and work really, really well. But for today, again, we're gonna keep it very, very simple. We're gonna focus on the natural here from Potski and their fire brine. I've got the alewives in the bucket here, got the aerator in there. They're mostly dying out right now. And the next important part of this is that you do not wanna handle these fish much at all. You wanna do your best to stay away from touching the fish so that those scales come right off. Their scales come off very easily, and having the scales on the alewife is probably the most important part of this whole meat strip process, is preserving all of that, so that when it's in the water rotating, the scales reflect off the light, and that's what attracts the fish, on top of the natural scent that comes with all of this. So now that we kind of covered the ground rules, let's go ahead and do these cuts. They're a little tricky to handle. It's gonna take some getting used to, and you just have to accept that you're probably gonna screw up the fillets as you're getting used to doing this, because they're such a small fish. They're slimy and all of that. So have some patience, and that's why it's a good idea to catch more than you probably need, because it's gonna be like a work in process. Even I've screwed up some of these already. But here we are. I'm gonna use the alewive's head to maneuver it. I don't wanna touch the sides to knock off any of those scales, which is super important. So I'm gonna grab the head here And I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna try and cut this here for you guys. It's a little awkward for me. So same way you would do like a salmon fillet. I'm just gonna kind of come down, cut into the alewife, make a little cut. Then I'm just gonna turn the blade and we're just gonna ride through that spine to get a chunk of the meat off here. And there we go, we've got one fillet off, and I'm gonna use the knife here. Try not to touch the scale side here. And I'm gonna dump it right into the bucket or little container here for when we add the brine. We have the other side of this here. Some folks would call it A side, B side. Once we got some of our fillets in the container here, first let's make sure we shake this up pretty good here. All right, once you stir it up, shake it up, it's ready to go. So we'll go ahead and pour some of this in there. And you can be very generous with this. You're probably gonna pour about half of this in there to make sure everything is completely submerged. And then once we've poured it all in here and all the fillets are completely submerged, we're gonna let this rest for like 24 hours. And you can do it longer if you are using some of the colored fire brine here. If you want like deeper coloration in those fillets, you're gonna let it sit for longer. But 24 hours is good enough for this to rest and keep refrigerated. All right, guys, that's how you catch, cut, and brine alewife to use for your meat rigs and get these meat strips and all of that. All right, if you need any of the products that we use today, like the fire brine from Potski, it's available at Lake Michigan Angler. We'll link to them down below. Stop by the shop and grab them from us over there. Hopefully you found this video useful, and hopefully you catch some big kings this summer on your meat rigs when you're out there fishing. Tight lines.